Well, welcome everybody to Marketing, Management, and Money, all things small business. Here today we have Shane Mishler. We are very excited to have him. He is with SD Tech. Now, a little bit of background here with Shane. So Shane has been in the IT world for a number of years, and he kind of had an interesting start. So he actually grew up as the oldest of 8 children, but he grew up in kind of an impoverished single mother home and was basically forced to emerge from that chaos and step into a leadership role at a very early age. And so learning to manage an entire household taught him the importance of grit, listening, and smart risk-taking that has given him an edge in business. So he's taken that edge and he has launched into SD Tech as the Chief Operating Officer. He has also guided many other organizations to help them thrive and flourish in kind of the IT and technology space. And so we are happy to have him on the show today. We're going to be talking a lot of tech. And so with that, Shane, why don't you kind of introduce yourself, give us a little bit of a background of what SD Tech is, where you've been with SD Tech, and then some of the other things that you've done outside of SD Tech, where you've had opportunities to help coach businesses, work with organizations, things of that nature.
I really appreciate you having me on the show, Ryan, and thank you very much for the warm introduction. You introduced me quite well, and very appreciate it. So a little bit about SD Tech. I'll start with SD Tech, and then I'll explain a little bit more about who I am. SD Tech is a managed services provider, an MSP. When I joined SD Tech a little over 4.5 years ago, I had never heard that term, never heard the acronym. I wasn't familiar with any of it, so I don't know how many of you out there are familiar with it. A managed service provider provides IT consulting and implementation for small to medium-sized businesses that don't have their own internal IT or help desk. So long story short, we come in, we assist business owners with identifying what types of technology is going to assist them in better servicing their client, and then we help them match the right technology to meet their goals. Namely, I think one of the biggest things I've seen, Ryan, with small business owners that don't have an MSP or an IT consultant assisting them is they typically end up overspending on technology that doesn't service them or their clients. So we come in and we try and help them better spend their money and take care of people. So a little bit about myself. You're very correct. I have been in IT or surrounding technologies for a number of years. I got into technology thanks to video games as a kid. It was a great escape. It's what I've always done as a hobby. I still do it now. But playing video games, I remember going to arcades with my father. And as I got into my teens, computers were just starting to come out into some people's homes, and I had very little access to a computer in my early teens, but I wanted to do more, but namely it was I wanted to play video games. So then I started to learn a little bit more about computers and Frankenstein my very first PC together, and then it kind of just went from there. In my early 20s, I was in art and music, and I started to learn how to bring art and music both together with technology, and so it's kept my hobbies fueled. And then eventually I got into it from a professional standpoint, and technology is ingrained in every aspect of my life. My wife works in tech. My daughter has been interested in tech. I enjoy podcasts and everything that technology brings to us. So it's amazing.
That's wonderful. So can I jump in real quick because so as you're talking about how tech has kind of shaped you and influenced you, and I remember growing up. So I grew up in the 80s. And, the definition of technology, my kids laugh at me. There's like, how did you go to school without the internet? And so I want to take just a quick second before we get too far down this path. And I want you to help define technology for small businesses. Because one of the things that I've seen a lot is I've seen a lot of small businesses do what I would call chase technology. something new and flashy comes out, they feel like they have to jump on the bandwagon. They start using stuff that really isn't applicable to them because they don't want to get left in the dust. And so can you just sort of talk about, I mean, coming from, and I don't know when you grew up, but the fact that you said arcades, I'm like, yeah, probably, you know, we probably grew up in a similar time frame. But can you talk about like the evolution of technology, but from a perspective of a small business owner? You know, like don't chase technology is kind of what I'm getting at here. But
I
with your
agree.
expertise,
I really do. So my my understanding of how technology supports a small business is oftentimes very different than somebody who's not in my field, because this is what I do day in and day out. And so sometimes this could be a difficult question for me to answer because I'm so deep in it. Um,
hmm
when it comes to chasing technology, I have seen a lot of, I do a lot of work with real estate agents and real estate brokerages. And real estate agents, oftentimes they want to be relatively flashy for their clientele, right? So when they're out showing homes, they want to make sure that they have the best of the best. And so I have seen a real estate agent spend absurd amounts of money on the highest end IMAX, because that's what they associate that with a very specific lifestyle, and that's what they want to showcase to their clients. And so I've seen them drop $4,000 to $5,000 on a machine that they will never use any more than 10% of. They're
hmm
those machines are they're made for like high-end marketing and graphic design, 3D animation, music, and these guys are out there loading up Chrome and showing off some pictures of various houses. So that's one area where I would say, you're kind of chasing and you're overspending. But on the flip side, I've also seen where real estate agents are really good about partnering with people who use like drone technology to go out and get really awesome flyovers of a home and showcase its area. So with just that one vertical, I've seen where they overspend and it's just very wasteful. And then on the other side, they're really getting into the technology that I enjoy and showcasing how it can enhance the services you're providing your clientele. For me, I'm from San Antonio, Texas, born and raised here. I was born in '82, so I grew up in the '80s and early '90s, and very grateful for the way that we've got to see technology emerge and go from being something that gently enhanced our lives to something. I mean, now it's in every single aspect. But so in San Antonio, I have a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I don't have need for technology in my small business." And I challenge anybody who believes that they don't have need for technology in their small business to explain to me how you manage that in today's age, because I can go meet with somebody who runs a taco truck. And Ryan, I don't know, are you familiar with taco trucks?
Oh, of
Like,
course. I mean,
okay,
come on, who's
great,
not familiar with Taco
fantastic,
Taco Tuesday? We're
just
good.
fantastic. So even a taco truck, they have to have some way of keeping inventory of what foods and materials they have, and they have to be able to keep that inventory from location to location. So they're typically going to have a laptop. They're going to use Microsoft Office or some type of Excel, Word, to keep track of that. They're going to need a POS system that is going with them. And right, so there's a ton of different ones, but that's all different forms of technology. You most likely are going to have social media representation, letting your clientele know where you're at, especially if you're a moving taco truck going from location to location. And then if you are a step above the rest, you're going to have a business phone that is separate from your home phone. And so having some type of voice over IP to allow for you to keep your home life and professional life a little bit separated. So even a taco truck has these 6 to 10 different pieces of technology that they need in place to truly be able to support them. Can it be done without it? Sure. But are you maximizing your service to your client? Absolutely not. So that's what I think of when I think of the positive ways that somebody is utilizing technology versus opening themselves up to chasing technology, as you said.
And I appreciate that you brought in the balance there because I kind of neglected that in my questioning. You know, I just made it sound like, oh, don't go too far with it, but there is there's a need, there's a requirement for technology. I find it interesting. So my dad He's actually going to have his 80th birthday
Wow.
here in 2 weeks. It's coming up pretty soon, right? And he just launched a YouTube channel. And I'm like, way to go, Dad. Like you're almost 80 years old, and here you are launching a YouTube channel. Now it's not business wise; it's for a hobby. He loves playing the guitar, and he writes his own songs, and so it's really exciting to see this. But to your point, when you said, okay, show me a business out there that doesn't use technology, I'm like, show me a person out there that doesn't use technology. And
It's
unless
very
you
true.
try, you're trying to get off the grid, like you're using some form of technology and having that balance, which is going to lead me to kind of this next question that I have. So SD Tech, you made the comment of most often people who don't understand, the services that are provided are going to end up spending too much money, and that feels counterintuitive. We see it a lot. I'm going to use an example that's going to make a lot more sense to me and hopefully some listeners out there. How many times have I been under the hood of my car? And at the end of an entire wasted day, I'm like, wow, I could have taken that in. Yeah, it would have cost me $200, but I spent $150 in tools because I didn't have them. Then I spent another $100 in parts. Then I spent my entire Saturday trying to get this car fixed, and I kind of got it right. I'm assuming it's a similar situation where it's like, sure, if you want to get under the hood, you can get under the hood. But let's talk about SD Tech. So bringing this in with how do we find the right balance of technology in our small business, and then talk about what does SD Tech do to help that.
So I would love to talk about that. Before I jump into that, I have a great story that just happened last weekend, that
I
really
love stories.
highlights exactly what you're talking about, Ryan. So um, SD Tech CEO Wes Ulmer, who's arguably one of my absolute closest friends, Wes, his son just turned 18. He has his first job. Technically, I think he's on his second job, but I think he's been working at McDonald's. He's saving up some money and he's working towards purchasing a car, or at least
Okay.
getting the down payment for a car. So he also just launched his very first YouTube channel, and he's doing some. It's really cool. He's doing game highlights from this game that he plays, and so he's been working on building up his YouTube channel. He's hosted a couple of giveaways, and he's doing great with it. So
Sure.
Wes asked his son last week. He said, "Hey kiddo, how much money do you have saved up for the down payment on this car?" And of course, Wes has access to his son's bank account, so he knew that he did. He recently did have about 2 grand saved up, and then his son got very sheepish and very shy, and he was like, "Well, I don't, not very much." And he was like, "Well, what happened? I thought you had a couple of grand." He was like, "Well, I've been really trying to push to get this YouTube channel, get some traction going for it." And he was like, I'm listening." He's like, "And I did the giveaway, and I got up to, I think he actually hit like 2,000 subscribers in a very short amount of time." He's like, "So the
Good for
giveaway was good, and so I wanted to put some money into marketing for the YouTube channel." He was like, "Okay, that's great. Did you come talk to me about it?" "No, of course not." "Well, how much money do you have left in your bank account?" He was like, I spent about all of it on the YouTube marketing." He has 4 videos on his YouTube channel, and he put more money into marketing the channel versus into content creation first, and so he kind of put the cart before the horse. And I see things like that happen so often, and you never want to discourage a young entrepreneur, but at the same time, you want to assist them in better spending their money. So, but we just see this happen on a regular basis. So some of the ways that SD Tech will come in and assist a company with better budgeting and right better spending. We will look at what it is they do day in and day out. So when I'm getting to know a client, oftentimes our client will come and they'll say, "Hey, I need help with my network. I need a new router, a new switch, new phones, new computers, whatever it is." And I will typically politely say, "Hey, let's circle back around to this conversation. Before I start making recommendations, I want to know, what do you do on a daily basis? Roughly how many employees do you have? and give me just a breakdown. What do your frontline employees handle day in and day out? And they're like, why are you so interested? I'm like, well, I cannot comfortably make uh, recommendations for you unless I know what everybody is actually doing. Because if you're saying that you need new computers for 5 different employees, those 5 different employees may want exactly the same computer, or they may need vastly different ones. And until I truly know what you're doing, then I'm not going to be comfortable making recommendations. So the consulting piece comes in. We want to get to know our client. We want to truly understand what it is, what product are they offering to their users, and then we assist them there, and we help build packages that go from the ground up.
That's awesome. No, that makes a lot of sense because so here at Marketing Management Money, we we work with a lot of small businesses, and I find as a business consultant or anyone who does business consultancy, one of the best things that you can do is have your customer, before they become a customer, go out and do it themselves, because you make a whole lot more money when you get to fix the mistakes than you ever would make if they would come to you on the front end. Now, I'm not advocating this. I'm kind of saying this tongue in cheek a little bit, but it's very true. Even when you were talking about the systems, there was a company that I was working with recently that they thought one computer ruled them all, kind of that Lord in the Rings
Yeah.
concept. And in their company, they had sales guys that were out and about. They traveled a lot. And so I'm like, okay, what do they do when they meet with customers? And it's like, oh, they just pull up like, digital flyers and show them the website. I'm like, dude, that's an iPad or just, some small little
Yep.
laptop. It's got to get through security easily, and it's going to get beat up. So don't buy anything of quality, because in 1 or 2 years that thing's going to get beat up. And then they had a graphic designer on their team, and that graphic designer was just so frustrated because he wasn't given a quality tool. And he was actually, when I first started working with this company, he was actually using his own computer because the company wasn't providing the correct machine.
Right.
And and one of the things that I helped the company understand is, I'm like, this is sort of like, if you have a restaurant and the cooks are bringing in their own pots and pans because you won't spend the money on pots and I mean, it sounds ridiculous. Like if you saw your chef like just wheeling in a cart of his own stuff because your stuff is junk, you'd be like, oh, we got to fix that. But in technology, sometimes our ignorance lets us just do that.
It's so true, and that's your metaphor, your analogies there are so accurate. I have seen where just people will spend more money on their salesperson because their salesperson has to look a particular way while they're letting their graphics designer in the back use the cheap iPad, and the guys out front are using the high end laptops. And it's like, oh man, you have that backwards. It's just backwards. You're decreasing your efficiency. You're impacting your employees. Like they're going to be frustrated trying to get their job done, and you're going to be asking them why they're not meeting deadlines, and then they're just like, this is all nonsense. And it can be fixed. It just takes a lot of work, and it takes somebody who's there assisting you along the way in most cases. I know like there's a lot that I am not great at. I'm not. And so I know when it's time for me to say, hey, I need somebody who can assist me, whether it's spending money, helping me budget, helping me plan, and just I know where my weaknesses lie, and I know what I need assistance with. And that's where we come in and we assist with this technology, because more often than not, it's either overspending, or it's, oh, well, one of our employees is pretty good with tech, so he helps out with a lot of stuff. And it's like, oh man, that's great. But aren't you paying him to handle a different set of responsibilities? How does he get everything done?
I see a lot of as soon as payroll comes in house, it's no longer an expense, and I'm like, okay, the
Hmm.
majority of small businesses, your number one expense is payroll. and you want to make use of every hour that you're paying for, because those are expensive hours. And I'm an advocate of paying good wages. I'm an advocate of having a good team and building up that team, but I'm also an advocate of making sure that you are managing that resource. And that I always say, you can outsource anything but your core competencies. So unless you're an IT firm, you can outsource your IT. Just like, most people have an outside accountant when it comes time to do your taxes or to do your quarterlies.
Yep.
You have no problem outsourcing that
Not
critical
at
piece.
all.
And even if you're brilliant in finance, you still want an expert looking over it. So, makes
You.
sense.
Look, I mean, the cost of hiring your own internal accountant for a small business versus outsourcing that is just that's a no-brainer. You're going to
Right.
save so much money and have it handled by a team. It's the same thing when it comes to technology. We are able to typically come in at 20 to 30% of what you would be paying, or if you hired your own technology team. And then how are you going to manage it? How are you going to train it? It's going to be small. So it does make a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to you, but I think that oftentimes it's not a matter of making sense. I think that a lot of people just don't realize it's an option.
So, okay, I want to talk about options here for a second, because there's this big thing going on. It's AI. Everyone feels like AI is replacing all of our jobs. In 2 years, we won't be having this conversation. It'll just be, generated, whatever that's be having. you know. Uh, I, I want you to talk about what is the role of AI, especially when it comes to running a small business. Now, I want to stay in your expertise of IT, because you can look at AI for marketing, you can look at AI for some of the daily tasks that you're going to have, a lot of content creation. But I want to stay focused on the IT side of things. What do you see in the next year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, that is really going to change because of AI, specifically in IT for small businesses?
Nothing. If I'm being quite honest, Ryan, it's nothing right now. I don't think that there's going to be any significant changes. You before we started
This is
recording, you mentioned that you were going to bring this up, and to be quite honest, this is something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. I spend a lot of time researching, and I do this from personal interest, more so than professional interest. So SD Tech, right? I stay busy more hours a week than I care to count, handling the responsibilities that I have to handle. So over the last 6 months, there's been two of us, myself and our CEO, who have started to drill further and further into AI because our clients, our friends, our guests, our the host of podcasts that I'm on, they look to us and say, "Hey guys, you're in technology. What do you think and feel?" And for the most part, the only experience we have personally had working with new AI has been ChatGPT, and we've primarily used it to help us write a couple of emails or help us with some documentation, which has actually been super helpful. But
Mhm.
right now, I outside of my professional experience, in my personal, I'm really focused on where AI is going because it is going, and there will be significant advancements in AI over the next 2 to 5 years. But I do not believe that those advancements are going to impact average everyday users. And you're right, there's a massive concern about I'm going to lose my job, AI is going to take over the world, and then from there you're just 5 to 10 years outside of seeing Terminator and Skynet happening, and there's a ton of fear. But the reality is that we are always going to need people governing what AI is doing, and so I don't see a concern with jobs very much outside of art, the arts. So with actual artwork, and then with voice, clearly there's some big concerns there, and it's a very hot topic. But right now, for what I'm hoping for from AI on how it's going to impact technology, is that that we're going to see advancements in cybersecurity. And I don't think it's going to be massive advancements where it's going to eliminate um, jobs, but I do think that it's going to work towards creating a more safe space. AI is going to be able to look for trends quicker and adapt quicker than any sets of human eyes can. And some of that technology, though, isn't new. The antivirus programs that we use and we've been using for 3 or 4 years are backed by AI, and it digs into the computer and it looks for um, trends. It looks for actions that haven't been present previously. So if somebody's opening up like a command prompt in the background, or if program A is attempting to access program C, and the AI says, "Hey, why is this one program trying to interact with this other program that's never happened before?" It can raise flags. Um, so it's already been there. It's already been assisting us quite a bit. I don't foresee any massive advancements over the next 2 years.
So you actually brought up my number 2 question, and I didn't give you a sneak peek on this one, so I apologize.
You're okay.
But it's security, cybersecurity, because that seems to be the other really big topic. I mean, you see, and I'm going with an extreme example here that has nothing to do with 99% of small businesses. But when you look at warfare, warfare is actually moving digital and cyber, which to me is just fascinating. I think it's so interesting to see that humans, for whatever reason, I read once, and this is not my expertise, but I read that humans, termites, and ants are the only species that will declare war. Everything else will fight, but like they fight food, or they only do small, like chimpanzees, they'll go out and do, like they have almost gangs where they go out and raid other, other chimps. But like termites, ants, and then us, we're right there with the termites, out there, waging war. But I look at cybersecurity. It's growing. It's increasing. There's a lot of fraud out there. This is a huge piece of IT. I've seen small businesses that they get threatened by ransomware, and so maybe tying this in, we'll kind of go from some of your AI comments where you said that AI really is going to help make that space more secure. But I'd also like to have a little bit of a discussion on that, maybe some best practices for small businesses, things that you've seen that that are good, bad, ugly, whatever. So with that, that's a big old backdrop. And I know we could do an entire series on cybersecurity. So I'm like, hey, smush it all in, but I would like to talk about it.
So cybersecurity is a very interesting space when it comes to small to even medium-sized businesses, because a lot of people think that they are just going to float under the radar, and it's just not, it's not true. Even for a small,
I've
Go
heard
ahead.
a statistic that small businesses are actually the number one target for cybersecurity, more so than medium and large businesses. I
It's
don't
true.
know how accurate that is. Okay, it is true.
It is, and it's because your larger. Okay, so let me back up a little bit. Um, Prior to working with SD Tech, the last organization that I worked for was Kohl's Department Stores, and I worked for their corporate office here, their secondary corporate office here in San Antonio, Texas. And during my stay at Kohl's, I worked through every department within that operation, and the last department I was working with before I left was their risk management operations. And so the risk management operations was broken down into two sectors: fraud and collections. And when I started with Kohl's, I don't remember when it was, 2013, 2014, they had one team of about 20 agents who worked fraud. And when I left, there were over 120 or 130 agents working fraud. So
That
what
speaks volumes.
it really does. I used to say what the majority of people didn't know, but I think that that's actually not true. I think that there's probably about 50-50 now. A lot of people know a little bit more about fraud because there's been really interesting TikTok videos, YouTube series where people like dig into how fraud actually works. But so you're aware, so your listeners are aware, fraud is a profession. And there are entire call centers with like hierarchy, frontline agents, team leads, supervisors, operation managers who are running multiple hundreds, low thousands of employees who are committing fraud in various verticals. So when you have a business and your business is fraud, if you go out and you might look at a high profile client, let's say a Las Vegas casino. A Las Vegas casino, if you could land a hit on a Vegas casino, that's gonna, one job and you're done. Like that's a movie. It's a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
bankroll and you're out. But targeting a Las Vegas casino is next to not next to impossible, but the amount of resources that you're going to have to pour into it, it's too much. It's going to take way too much work, and you're paying these employees. They're fraud
Mhm.
employees. They're bad guys, but you're paying them, and so you would have to have such a large bankroll to even go after that. That it makes going after a Las Vegas casino next to impossible. They have been using various forms of AIs for so much longer than the majority of businesses, facial recognition and fingerprints, and they have massive sets of cameras and all of this protection. Or you could target consumers, right? Not even necessarily businesses, but just going after a consumer. And that's why you see like identity theft and just bank fraud and going after credit cards because they find those to be the weak links. And it's easier to hit 1,000 small credit cards than to go after one larger business. And so that
Sure.
same mentality is what small businesses have to be looking at. Is it's just easier to go after a small business where they know that there's going to be lower cybersecurity installations. They're not going to have as much support. And because you're a small business, if you are subjected to ransomware, you're going to be more likely to pay out that ransomware because you don't have the backing that bigger guys have. So one of our one of our current clients we've been working with for a little over 3 years. It's a dental office, and it's a I would say it's a decent sized dental practice.
Mm.
The dentist has 2 locations. He probably has a total of 15 to 20 employees. And 3 years ago, he got hit with ransomware, and he found that all of his CRM was totally locked down. He lost access to all of his client records, and he reached out to. We weren't at this point in time. We weren't his provider yet, but he reached out to his IT company and said, "Hey guys, this is what's going on. Can I get access back to my information by using a backup?" They were like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. We've been hosting backups for you." Well, it turned out that he had been paying for backup services, but none of the information had actually been backed up for 6 months. So,
Ooh.
yeah, so this guy, he ran into some really big problems, and so he turned to us. We stepped in. We helped him um, the best we could. Of course, he ended up being out a ton of data, and so we assisted him in coming up with a plan on how to gain that data back. He chose not to pay the ransomware, and it, kudos to him for not doing it. But it did. I think that he had to close both practices for the better part of a week, and all employees had to go into a triage mode to start recovering the data that had been lost. And then they have to reach out to their clients and explain that that they were a victim and therefore that the client's information had also um, been
Been
released and yeah, it had been compromised. And so it was really impressive. I think that San Antonio is a great community, and I think he lost a handful of clients, but the vast majority of everybody was really understanding, and I think that he got very, very lucky. So since then, he has well, we maintain his offsite backups, and he has an onsite backup. And for a lot of people, having two different types of backups feels like overkill, but for a person who has been through this before, they understand it better. And the offsite backup is great. Um, it makes things a little bit more secure, but it also takes a little bit longer to do a backup recovery in the event that you actually need it. And he uses his on-site backup for when he needs immediate access to it. Unfortunately, in the last 3 years, nothing has come up, but he understands the importance of protecting his business, protecting his clients, protecting their information, because this small dental practice was hit with ransomware. And we, fortunately, none of our clients have ever had it happen. And I would love to say it's because our clients follow our recommendations and that we have all the right tools and things in place. But the reality is we've been lucky. Even with having the right tools in place, the majority of the time, all you're doing is making it um, more difficult to be the subject of a ransomware attack or of cybersecurity um, infiltration. But our main focus is, in the event that it does happen, how quickly can we recover from it and keep your information safeguarded? Uh,
Uh, uh,
Cybersecurity. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was going to say, you are correct in saying that you've been lucky. However, I find that minor things make major deterrents because, as you mentioned, these people, they're in it for business. And if they can go after someone that is like, well, okay, they have some weak security in place, but this person has no security in place. Well, from a business perspective, if I'm cycling through hundreds, if not thousands of these, every time that I have to take that much more time to get around security, it's not that they're incapable of getting around the security. It's just the economy is such that, oh, it's more cost effective to
It
go
is.
after the no security. So my experience has been that businesses that put even some minor precautions in place, it pays pretty big dividends in terms of the likelihood. It's not a guarantee. I know businesses that they were Fort Knox and they still got hit. And, that's the world we live in. And so, to your point that you were getting at, is how quickly can you get back up and running? So I don't want to cut that point short, but I do. And I'm kind of stating this slash asking this of, do you feel that, that minor precautions, do pay dividends?
They absolutely do. I think and that's exactly where I was going with this, is when it comes to cybersecurity, every time that you put another layer in place that helps provide that protection, because that's in my eyes, that's all cybersecurity is how many layers of protection do you have in place. But as you add in new layers, you start to make things more difficult for your employees to do their job, right? So I think one of the best layers of cybersecurity that a company can have in place is just using multi-factor authentication for their passwords, right? So you input your regular password and then having a little 6-digit code, whether that's a text message or email, having that in place is very, very helpful. But it adds inconvenience for your employees, because every time you're going to log into something, now I have to do something extra. So every time you're adding in a layer, you're making it more difficult or cumbersome to do your job. And so I think that you have to find a good balance. And I don't even want to say the right balance, because the right balance is going to vary from person to person. But you have to find a good balance between making things difficult to get into versus making your life excessively inconvenient. We all know that it's better to park your car in a garage. It makes it less likely to get stolen or broken into. But
Right.
how many of us still park our cars in our driveway because parking in the garage is an inconvenience, whether it's just getting the car into the garage or because we use our garage for storage and a whole bunch of other stuff. But those are the things that we think about that on a regular basis, and we're making a conscious decision. And I think that when it comes to cybersecurity, it's very helpful to look at it the same way. We know that there's risks involved, but do we understand what layers of protection we have available to us? Do we understand the convenience that it offers or inconvenience that it imposes? And are we looking at securing our business, or are we just living on hopes that we're not going to be the ones being targeted?
Yeah, and I think that's really excellent advice. Is the whole concept of saying, okay, how do we put layers in place? The more layers that you have, but finding that balance.
Okay.
I've worked with a lot of businesses, and I don't do tech and security is not. I will let them know, hey, you need to have this, but I'm not going to be the guy that's going to provide that. But that's the number one argument that always comes back is I just don't have time for that. I'm already so busy. To which my response is, do you have time for a ransomware?
No,
You
probably
really
not.
don't have time for that.
No.
You
But
know.
oftentimes, again, though, I think that people just don't know their options. And I think that there's a ton of business owners out there who don't realize that they have an option of reaching out to a consultant who's going to do all the legwork for them and then make some recommendations, discuss the budget, and then help them figure out the implementation. And so um, hopefully this conversation just makes you aware that there are people out here who do this for a living, and a large number of these businesses offer free consultation and will at least help you get thinking about what you need to be doing, because being the victim of ransomware it's dude, it sucks. Like there's just no way around it. It's time consuming, it's expensive, and it can have a real negative impact on your community if your clients lose trust in you.
Yeah, absolutely. So to just wrap up, we're kind of out of time, but if someone were interested in getting that consultation with you and your team, how would they connect with you? If you could say that out, we'll also put that in the description so people can follow up. But what's the best way to connect with you?
So the best way to connect with me personally is going to be on LinkedIn. You can find me underneath Shane Mishler. To reach out to SD Tech, we do provide all of the services I've been mentioning, and honestly, a ton more. If it's technology centric, we'll assist with it. And we are located in San Antonio, Texas, but we do work internationally, primarily in the Northern America so far, but I have clients everywhere. And you can find us at sd-tech.net. You can also find us through LinkedIn as well, but I'd give numbers and all that other stuff, but it's all extra. You could just reach out. We love getting to know new people and assisting them and assisting their clients.
That's awesome. And, about 15 to 20% of the listeners of this show are international. So, like you said, you do provide an international service.
We do.
And so if you do want to reach me, you can find me, Ryan, at marketingmanagementmoney.com. This has been one of our interview episodes. And thank you so much, Shane, for being on board with us, providing some awesome insight, great discussion. And we hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Take care.